Welcome to the Sizzle Basketball Podcast. Today I'm going to talk about the NBA Finals matchup between the Milwaukee Bucks and the Phoenix Suns. I'm going to give you my prediction and kind of just give you a matchup by matchup breakdown. So this is going to be a really interesting series. So without further ado, let's get into it. So obviously we know the Milwaukee Bucks came off a 4-2 win against Atlanta, and then the Suns came off a 4-2 win against the Clippers. So they will meet in the finals. First game is tomorrow night. It's in Phoenix, so Phoenix will have home court advantage for this series. And this is a series that I expect to go 7 games. Two teams, in my opinion, that are very evenly matched. Mostly young players on both of these teams. You have a leader in Phoenix and Chris Paul, and then the leader in Milwaukee and Giannis, whose status for Game 1 is still in question. But I've been hearing multiple reports today that Giannis should get the green light to play for Game 1, which would mean he'd be healthy for the whole series. Phoenix is healthy. Milwaukee's healthy other than DiVincenzo, but they found the right guys to help replace him in Forbes and Connaughton, who both played well. So this is going to be a fun series. And, it's interesting because this is a finals that is much different from previous finals. Because in previous years, you almost kind of expected certain teams to get to the finals. I think last year, nobody really expected Miami to get to the finals, but most people expected the Lakers to get there. And then previous years, before that, most of expected it to be Cleveland and Golden State. Nobody was that shocked when it was Toronto. Well, I guess people were shocked when it was Toronto, but nobody was that shocked when it was Golden State. 2 years ago. And then before that, you had the Heat a lot and the Spurs. This is one of the finals where you kind of look at and you say, okay, nobody expected both of these teams to be in here before the playoffs started. Maybe some people thought Milwaukee, but I don't think most people thought Milwaukee. I think most people gave up hope with Milwaukee after, the last couple of years and what they've done in the playoffs. And Milwaukee's completely turned those critics around. They played great all season, especially in the postseason. Giannis has taken his game to another level in the postseason here. He's really shut the critics up who said that he can't play in the playoffs. Yes, he still struggles from the line, but he's gotten that mid-range jumper. He's making it more. He's making the post fade more than he ever has in the playoffs. He's not getting fooled by the wall. He's been able to kick it out to shooters more, and he's able to get through that wall more. Giannis has just been great. And then, of course, Chris Middleton has had the best playoffs of his career, in my opinion. Struggled a little bit, in a couple games against Brooklyn, but then picked up at the end in that Brooklyn series and played unbelievable against Atlanta, closing out games, 40-point games, just playing really, really well. And, he's a guy, obviously, that's the second best player in this team, most people would say. He's a guy that they need. He's their closer, in my opinion. And he's been able to do that throughout the playoffs. He's been able to close, which is really important. And in previous years, he didn't close well. So that's another thing that's taken this Milwaukee Bucks team, their game to the next level, is Middleton's ability to close games. And then, of course, you have Jrue Holiday, who's played incredible. Jrue Holiday is a very smart, high IQ player who doesn't force any passes, doesn't force any shots, really. Plays unreal defense, can switch onto many players defensively. In my opinion, can guard 1 through 4. That may sound crazy, but he's a pretty solid post defender if you watch him. Yeah, 5 is a little big for him to guard, but he can guard 1 through 4. And, we've seen him in multiple series so far in the playoffs in the Eastern Conference switch on to multiple guys, whether in the Miami series it was Jimmy. He even guarded Bam in the post once in a great while. Not much, but mainly it was Jimmy who he was on, Dragic, Hero, Nunn. Switched on to multiple Robinson, switched on to multiple different guys that did great on just about every single guy in that Miami series. Then in the Brooklyn series, you saw him on Kyrie in the beginning. You saw him on guys like Bruce Brown. You saw him guard Durant once in a while. You saw him guard multiple different players. And, you saw him also guard Harden there when Harden came back at the end of that series. You saw him guard multiple different players, and you see what kind of effect it has on this Milwaukee team and how much it transforms this Milwaukee team on the defensive end, because they become a whole different defensive monster when Jrue Holiday is on that team. And when he's defending the way he can defend, he can switch on to so many different guys, and it makes it tough because then you also have to realize Holiday switching on to all these different guys. Then you still have Giannis, who can guard great. You have Middleton, who guards great. PJ Tucker, who's in the starting lineup now, who guards great. And then Brook Lopez, who guards great too. You have 5 guys on one team who are all very solid defensive players. You have Giannis, who's an all-NBA defensive guy. Same with Jrue Holiday. Lopez is right there. He's not quite there, but he's right there. Middleton's right there too. And then you have PJ Tucker, who's a little under all them, but he's still a very good defender. So this Milwaukee team, man, they're tough. And I'm going to take the Bucks in 7. I think the Bucks will win this series in 7. I think Jrue Holiday will win Finals MVP. I think he'll average almost near a triple-double. I think he'll average around 21, 10 assists, and 8 boards. I would normally obviously want to give it to Giannis or Middleton, But I'm going to go with the surprise here. I'm going to say Drew Holiday wins it because I think Phoenix can do pretty well against Giannis and Middleton. They have certain guys that can defend those guys well. Obviously, Chris Paul can defend Drew Holiday well too, but I think they'll get a lot of switches on Chris Paul and get guys a Booker on Holiday a lot, and that's a favorable matchup for Milwaukee. I think they'll get that matchup a lot, and Drew Holiday will win that matchup, obviously, on the offensive end. And I think, Drew Holiday will kind of be forgotten about in this series for Phoenix defensively. I think they'll kind of forget about him in a way because I think they'll put so much pressure on Giannis defensively and Middleton that they'll kind of forget about what Drew Holiday can do, and I think that will allow Drew Holiday to take full advantage in a series like this. I like his matchup in this series because I think he'll get a lot of switches, like I said, on the guys like Booker. He'll even get some switches on the guys like Bridges, and Bridges is a great defensive player, but Bridges is a good defensive player on small forwards, power forwards, and he can defend centers. He doesn't defend guards too well. And Holiday's got a lot of, I don't know how to say, like polished moves, great footwork. It's very tough to defend him. Very tough to defend Holiday. As great as a defender as Bridges is, Bridges will do well, I think, on Middleton. He'll do well on PJ Tucker. He might do pretty well on Giannis. I don't think he'll do that well on Drew Holiday. So I think Drew Holiday can take full advantage here in this series, in my opinion. From the Phoenix standpoint, obviously the goal would be to play through Chris Paul, like you've been playing, and then allow, Chris Paul to get Devin Booker's game going. Booker should average 28, 30 plus in this series. He should have a great series, in my opinion. He's been playing great, out of his mind. And, Milwaukee's going to give them everything they have defensively. Milwaukee will make it tough on Booker. They're going to put Holiday, I think, on him for the most part. And then sometimes they'll put PJ on him. And then once in a while, they'll put Giannis on him and they'll put Middleton on him. So it's not going to be that easy for Phoenix. They get, Phoenix runs a lot of screens and they get Booker into that mid-range area a lot. And Booker kind of fades away and always knocks down that mid-range shot. That's his bread and butter right there. So Milwaukee may be able to take that part of his game away to an extent because even if he comes around screens, you're going to have Giannis coming up on you really quick and really fast. And Giannis is going to really alter your shot because Giannis will come up from down low or Brook Lopez will come up from down low and really contest your mid-range shot. So, Booker's going to have a lot of, tough shots to take and make in this series, but Booker is capable of it. So, we know he can do it. It's just a matter of hopefully he's able to do it in this series because that will be a big difference maker. Obviously, if Booker can get to his mid-range spot and knock it down, it's going to be a big difference maker because Booker, that's his bread and butter. And when he gets there and he gets a little bit of space, it's game over. He's going to make it every time. So Milwaukee's goal should obviously be to obviously the screens are going to be tough to defend. You're obviously going to get beat on the screens most of the time because that's just how it is. Phoenix sets a ton of screens. And then your goal after that should be to say, okay, don't allow Booker to get too much space on that mid-range jumper. Really contest him. And if you contest him as much as he can and he still makes it, that's all you can do. You can't do much more than that. So that's obviously the goal for Milwaukee defensively against Booker. Ayton has an interesting matchup in this series too against Brook Lopez. Brook Lopez did very well against Bam. Brook Lopez did solid against the big men in Atlanta. Little brain fart there. He did well against Atlanta. Did well against Capella and John Collins. So it'll be interesting to see how he does against Ayton because Ayton's probably the best big man he's faced. I would say Ayton's better than Bam. So Ayton's going to be the best big man he's faced. Ayton's been very physical down low. He's going to try to probably body Brook Lopez, but Brook Lopez is a great defender. So it could be tough on Ayton, right? So this is an interesting matchup on both ends too. And Ayton could give Brook Lopez some struggles on offense too. Ayton's played great defensively in this whole playoffs. So that matchup is going to be a really fun one to keep an eye out for too. So obviously the big news is, the Giannis injury. And I think I mentioned it earlier. And if I didn't, he should be back for game one. He should get the green light for game one. And, Giannis is in his first finals ever. Chris Paul's in his first finals ever. We have two guys who are big fan favorites going at it, trying to see who can win the finals. And I think this is a great finals for the NBA because it's a finals where you have two teams who are young for the most part, but have two leaders who people have respected for a long time. Chris Paul's been in the league way longer than Giannis, obviously, but people have always loved and respected Chris Paul. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. Giannis should be a first ballot Hall of Famer as well if everything keeps going, the way it's gone. So you have two guys who are leading their team, who will put everything on the line to get their team a win. And then you kind of have two young guys in Middleton and Booker, who are both of their team's second best player, I think we can agree on, who have been playing lights out all playoffs and, both had 40-point games, everything in between, right? They've had a lot of 40-point games, both of those two guys. Yeah, Middleton. I think, actually, let me rephrase that. Middleton's had one, Booker's had a couple, I think. But they've both had many 30-point games. They've closed games really well. So those two right there, Middleton and Booker, that's going to be a fun thing to kind of see how Middleton and Booker play. Because Chris Paul's going to give you what he gives you every night. Giannis is going to give you what he gives you every night. Yeah, Booker should give you what he normally gives you, and so should Middleton. But that matchup's going to be interesting, Going to be interesting to see how many 40-point games we get from Booker, how many 40-point games we get from Middleton. How many games will Middleton have 15 in the fourth quarter, right? And just close the game out ridiculous. How about Booker? How many games in this series will Booker have where he can just close the game out ridiculous, right? So that's going to be very interesting to keep an eye out for. Mikal Bridges is a big part in this series for Phoenix. He's the X factor, in my opinion, for Phoenix. If he can score 14, 15 a game and play great defense, like I said, I think he'll have a tough defensive matchup against Holiday. But if he can at least play the best defense he can and make it tough for Holiday at times and score around 14 or 15 a game, right, and to make it tough for guys like PJ Tucker and Middleton, Phoenix should win this series. He's going to be the biggest difference maker because for the most part, like I said, Chris Paul and Booker should do their thing. Ayton, like I said, I think he'll have a tough matchup, but Ayton should be able to do his thing the way he's playing. He's got a lot of confidence right now. Crowder is just going to give you his typical 12 game, 10-12 game, no matter what, most likely, right? So now it's going to depend on how well does Mikal Bridges play in this series. He's the difference maker because he's arguably their best defensive player. Well, he is. I would say he is their best defensive player. And he's one of their better shooters. And he's the kind of guy who tends to fly under the radar. And, teams tend to forget about him on the defensive end. They don't really think of him much as an offensive player, even though he's more than what teams think of him. And he could fly under the radar, which means he could have a big series, or he could not hold up with the pressure, and he could have a really bad series. So that one's going to be an interesting one to keep an eye out for. The coaching in this series, too, is going to be interesting because these are two teams who make a lot of adjustments, and I expect both of these teams to make adjustments throughout this series. And, Monty Williams has done a great job with Phoenix. Budenholzer's done a good job with Milwaukee. I don't know if Budenholzer's still on the hot seat or not. I know they've said a lot that Budenholzer, if he doesn't win this series, he'll get fired. So that'll be an interesting thing to keep an eye out for. And, coaching's great in this series. Both teams look great at home. They play really well at home. Milwaukee tends to kind of drop the first game in the series. Or they tend to not really play well in the first game of the series because it almost seems like Milwaukee's trying to feel out their opponent. So I think Phoenix will win game 1. I think Milwaukee takes game 2. I think Milwaukee takes game 3 and 4, which would mean Milwaukee goes up 3-2. I think Milwaukee goes up 3-1. My mistake. I think Phoenix goes back home and they win in game 5. So that's 3-2. Then I think Phoenix will get a big win in game 6 in Milwaukee, which will make the series 3-3, obviously. And then I think Milwaukee will close out in Phoenix. I do. They'll win game 7. I think it'll be an overtime game. I think it'll be an absolute thriller of a game. I think it'll be great. I expect all these games in this series to be great. I don't think there'll be any blowouts, right? Because these are two evenly matched teams, as I mentioned. I wouldn't be surprised if I do think Milwaukee will win, but it wouldn't surprise me if Phoenix won either. Because, like I said, this is a series that can go either way. It'll be interesting to see who America's rooting for because this is kind of a series where I feel like, a lot of people kind of just like both teams. A lot of people like Chris Paul and Booker. A lot of people like Drew Holiday and Middleton and Giannis. So these are two teams where a lot of people have a lot of love for these teams, even if you're not a fan of them. Like, even if they're not your favorite team, you still have love for these teams. So I think this will be a very watched series, too. I think the TV ratings will be great. I think America won't be disappointed, other than if you're a Bucks fan or a Suns fan. Whether who wins, I don't think America will be disappointed, really. I think they just want to see a good series, from these two teams, because I think most NBA fans know how evenly matched these two teams are. And they know what these two teams bring to the table and how well they've played in the postseason so far. And we know who both teams' leaders are. And we know both teams' leaders are going for their first ring. This is both of their first finals appearance, right, for Chris Paul and Giannis. And for Chris Paul, it's a crazy story because I don't think anybody ever expected him coming to Phoenix this year. As great as Phoenix looked in the bubble last year, 8-0. I don't think anybody expected Chris Paul coming to Phoenix would allow this team to go to the finals. I don't think anybody expected that. And that's crazy to think. Even as great as they were all regular season, I think most of us expected them to lose to the Lakers. They beat the Lakers. I think most of us said, okay, they'll probably beat Denver. They beat Denver well. They beat Denver easy. And I think most people thought, okay, even with Kawhi out, I heard a lot of people saying they think the Clippers will still beat the Suns, and they thought that Kawhi would come back in that Suns series, right? And he didn't, right? But even people that said that thought he wasn't going to come back. They still thought the Clippers were going to beat the Suns, and the Suns were able to beat the Clippers. And then there's another side of the story, right, where the people think that the Suns have an easy route to the finals. They've faced a lot of teams with injuries. Okay, yeah, the Lakers got hurt. Denver was hurt. The Clippers were hurt. But guess what? Every year, there's a couple teams that get hurt. And that's just how it is. It's very sad. It's upsetting, but that's just how it is. And this Phoenix team has done everything they can to get to the finals. They deserved it. Chris Paul's played out of his mind. Ayton's played out of his mind. Booker's played great. Bridges has played good enough. Crowder's played great. Cameron Payne's been great off the bench, right? Cameron Johnson's been solid off the bench. Torrey Craig's been great off the bench. This team has played great. They're coached well. They're deep. They're shooting the ball well. They're getting in the paint. They're making their free throws. They're playing great defense. They're just playing great team basketball. Nobody's hogging the ball too much, right? They're playing great team basketball. And then on the other side, yeah, Milwaukee's, they beat a Miami team 4-0, right? Miami had Oladipo out, but we know that probably wouldn't have made a difference in that series. As great as Oladipo is, maybe Miami wins one, but Miami just got absolutely killed in that series. They're not going to win that series with Oladipo. And then in the second round, Milwaukee beat a Brooklyn team that didn't have Harden for a majority of the series and didn't have Kyrie for the last couple games. Okay, yeah, maybe they wouldn't have beat them if they were fully healthy, but you never know. At the end of the day, Milwaukee played a great series. They're coached really well. They're deep. They did everything they could against Brooklyn. They got down low against Brooklyn a lot, and that was Brooklyn's struggle. Brooklyn can't defend down low, and they punched Brooklyn right in the stomach in Brooklyn's weakness. They got down low with Giannis and Brook Lopez a lot, and they were able to dominate the Nets down low, and that's where the Nets struggled, down low defensively. They took advantage of the Brooklyn Nets' weakness, right? They took advantage of Miami's weakness this year, which Miami's weakness seemed to be they weren't physical enough. Took advantage of that. And then they took advantage in this past series against Atlanta when they said, okay, as great as Trae Young is, right? Yes, Trae Young was hurt too for a couple games. 2 games he missed. As great as Trae Young is, yeah, he's going to drop his 35-40 a game, and he's probably going to have 10 assists, but okay, there's not much we can do about that because he's that good. Now let's see if the other guys can beat us, because Trae Young can't beat us alone in the series. He can beat us for a couple games, but not in the whole series, and they just said, okay, you saw what happened in Game 7. Trae Young did struggle, but even some other games where Trae Young played great and Atlanta lost, they said, let the other guys beat us, and the other guys as great as they are in Atlanta, right? They're very young and they're inexperienced. John Collins, Kevin Huerter, right? Bogdanovich. These guys are young, they're inexperienced. So they don't have, a lot of playoff experience, and, it's tough for them to hit big-time shots at big moments because experience makes a huge difference. So Milwaukee said, okay, you guys beat us with those guys, and if you can beat us with those guys, then you're the better team. And Atlanta was not able to beat Milwaukee with the other guys. The only way they could beat Milwaukee is with Trae Young. And as great as Trae Young is, nobody's going to beat Milwaukee in a 7-game series by themselves. Kevin Durant couldn't do it even himself. So if Kevin Durant can't do it, Trae Young can't do it. So Milwaukee took advantage of that too. And, it's been both of these teams. Yes, they have both faced injured teams in the playoffs a lot, but they've taken advantage of what they've been given. And they played great. And I don't think you can come out with, the argument, oh, they wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the injuries. Like I said, you don't know that, and you can't make that excuse. These are the 2 teams in the finals, right? And it's going to be a great series, and I hope everyone enjoys it. And both teams earned their way to the finals. And these are the 2 best teams in the league. Milwaukee and Phoenix, those are the 2 best teams in the league. And guess what? They were arguably the 2 best teams in the league all year. They were both great in the regular season too. So it's not like we're getting 2 teams that were bad in the regular season and just beat a couple teams because they were injured. No, these are 2 teams who were great throughout the regular season and have played great basketball in the postseason. So I'm really excited. I want you guys to drop your predictions down below. Put them in the YouTube comments. Put them in my Instagram comments. Everything. Just drop your comments or your predictions down low. Give me your Finals MVP. Who you think is going to win the whole thing? Right. Give me your X factor for both teams. Things like that. I just want to hear that. I'm going to be interested to see what you guys think. And I hope you guys enjoyed today's podcast and can't wait to talk about the NBA Finals when this thing gets started with you guys. I'm really excited. So take care.